The master plan, and I guess we're talking about, is there a master plan? Do we still need a master plan? Because we don't have a master plan. Many cities don't have a master plan because it's just simply expansion of future suburbs, having more suburbs happen and everything. So it's remarkable how little planning actually happens, right? But if we can afford to think along the line of a master plan for a North American city, or let's say specifically Toronto, then I'd say the master plan should be 200 villages, if not, 200 villages. And what's Toronto? I think it's about 2 million people, divided by, let's say, about 8,000 people per village. How many villages is that? Anyway, hundreds of villages, and that each have a right to say it's not about sluicing car traffic through it, but it has a right to say we wish our street to be, or our blocks to be, more about this. And of course, I'm really thinking a lot, again, what I said earlier about this idea that we have a live and work ability within neighborhoods. Of course, like extended families within the neighborhoods, and that children are welcomed, and so on, which is not so much the case with condo construction. But that we have then the ability to say it's not about unfettered movement of car vehicles. It's more the European way, where cars sort of tippy-toe through the streets, Because of course there will be cars, and we're talking 2050. We will have still private vehicles, of course, but there's less need for movement because many of us are living, working in the same neighborhood. Smaller retail instead of the big box stores. And so really putting the brakes on the way we're going now. And I don't know how we do it, but the sort of the groundswell from below is about that we need to go that way. And I think a lot of it is driven by economics, that it cannot come from above anymore because the tax dollars are not there anymore. So it has to come from below, but we need to change the bylaws. And we need to basically foster the idea of villages, and it's already has begun in Toronto, and is a long tradition of that. But it just needs to happen with more vigor and less, putting on the brakes on in terms of sort of like big city planning, because we don't live in the modern age anymore, where we have all that money available to sort of steer it all where we want it to go. But we basically, and that's the Regent Park link. We basically have to enable and have bylaws that enable people to be self-starters rather than waiting for somebody to do it for them. And I think having people be self-starters and having neighborhoods evolve to be of a particular kind, it will only enrich the city and will make people very, very happy and choose to remain in Toronto. When, let's say, the future is based on has to be based on an official plan, then I would be not the first one, neither the last one to say it has to be based on transportation. I think, of course, public transit is very good, but in my mind it wins over private transit. But the idea that sort of is based on sustainability is we just simply move around less than we do today. So I think it's more about place-making and neighborhood making rather than spending so much on, spending so much of our time to sort of, argue about what is the type of transportation we need. Something is going to hopefully happen soon, that we have a public transit that we can, a system that we can agree on. But in my mind, it's more about the making of a place. And I know, being an immigrant myself, it's about how do we instill a notion with people that are new to Canada and that are coming to Canada, that Toronto is a good place to be. When in fact the real estate prices are going through the roof, and when in fact the jobs are not well paying anymore for those kind of people, and I really worry about that. And so I think we need to make neighborhoods and let the current neighborhoods evolve, the suburban neighborhoods evolve, where people basically see a future because they can do what they need to do, and they see a future for their children. And to me, that's really what a master plan should be all about, which is, it's not necessarily about going to jobs when the jobs could be somewhere else in the world, you know. Now, Toronto is relative to Detroit. As you know, Detroit is basically hollowed out. There's people moving out, about 700,000 people a year are moving out of Detroit City, which is incredible. And we don't have that problem in Toronto, fortunately, but we don't want it to be that way in the future either. So, and for that, we need to have a master plan, which is that we allow dwellings to evolve, properties to evolve, to make more intensive use of it. And again, to have the ability to be able to carry out the business on it, like a clean business. And that people in the neighborhood can basically get what they need from the neighborhood, instead of having to travel everywhere. But certainly it's about traveling to work. I think that's an utter and total disaster. That somehow, with all the internet abilities we have, that people feel compelled to drive an hour and a half to go from Mississauga to Markham to a job. I think that's just so insane. When you think of the number of hours involved, the number of hours when they could actually be with their kids, or could be with their elderly parents, but instead there's no quality of life in that whatsoever. So I think that is extremely important, that we need to resolve that, you know, sooner than later. It's certainly not. We need to have a plan that can be functional in the future.